Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to use text and graphics, and we're going to start with just graphics themselves using Microsoft Word. A little bit different from how you would do things, say, in Google Docs, but we're going to start with one and we might move to the other. You're going to need to open a couple of files, and both of these files are going to be in the U drive, so we first have to navigate to the U drive. Now mine is labeled a little bit different, but mine is labeled as student resources on W, yours is student source files on U. You click that, you go to our course folder, which is BTT10 Mr. Oliver. You find a file called BTT10 Home, you click on that. That's going to take you to a bunch of things, and we've probably seen this before. It's taking a while to load up. There we go. From there, you're going to wait for a minute and then go to MS Word with graphics. And from here, we are going to want both of these files. So I'm going to start with the practice graphics, and then I'll come back for the text wrapping a little bit. That's going to actually, while I'm here, why don't I get the other one as well? For me, it downloads both files rather, and it puts them into a thing, into the menu on the bottom. And I'm going to open with the one that says shapes. Okay, so that takes a second to open up, and then I get to here. Okay, so I want to start with two rectangles. I want to start with the large rectangle and the small rectangle. And obviously we know how this works. If you click on one, you select it, you get some sizing handles, so I can click and drag to make this bigger. You get a rotate handle, so I can click and drag to rotate, and I'm going to undo that. If I click off of the rectangle, I unselect it. If I click on the small rectangle, I select it. If I click on the one rectangle and then the other rectangle, I will unselect one and select the other. If I want to select both, I'm going to hold down the Shift key. So Shift key on the keyboard. So I click on one, hold down the Shift key, click on the other. So Shift click. And I want to just point out something, that when I do that, I have two shapes selected, and both of them have a sizing handles, or have sizing handles, and both of them have a rotate handle. If I were to click and rotate, I'm just going to do a little bit, you'll notice that they both rotate at the same time, the same amount, but they also rotate independently of each other. Now I'm going to do undo and put them back. If I want to treat them as a single shape, I have to group them. So what I'm going to do is, there's two places I can find this. Number one is up in the Format menu. So whenever you have shapes selected, a new menu pops up. So I'm going to go back and select both of those again. It says Drawing Tools and then Format. And if I'm in that menu, down near the right-hand side, I have an option to group. Now if you don't like using the menus, if you prefer to do right-click, if I right-click on the shape that I've selected, or shapes that I have selected, I have an option to group there. And if I group them, you'll notice they become one shape, so with only one set of sizing handles and one rotate handle. And if I were to rotate that now, then they rotate together. Okay, so I'm going to leave that to the side. I'm pretty much done with that. I want to look at the bicycle now. Now, as bicycles go, this is not a very good bicycle, but as drawings go, you can recognize that it's a bicycle. And if you can't, it's a bicycle. Take my word for it. Now, this bicycle might look like a bicycle to you and me, but to the computer, it's just a collection of lines and circles. So if I were to click on a tire and I wanted to move it, I would only move that wheel. Now I could go through and shift click everything, but that would be a lot. So when I have a lot of shapes and I want to select them all, what I'm going to do is on the main menu, so under Home tab, right hand side of the Home tab, there is a menu option that says Select, and it's got a little drop arrow. So if I click on that and pull out the different options, one of them is to select objects. If I click on that, select objects, I'm going to now draw a box. So I'm going to left click, drag, and you'll notice I'm drawing a box. If I include the entire bicycle in that box, everything will get selected. Now I have to be careful, because if I'm not careful, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Go back and do select objects again. If I'm a little bit careless and I don't select the entire bicycle, so you'll notice I've not included the entire tire, the entire wheel on either, neither of those gets selected. So if I were to try moving the bicycle, I only move part of it. Okay. So I need to make sure I select the entire bicycle and put everything inside that box. So sometimes it'll take a couple of tries. Once I've done that, now I can group them. Same place as before. I'm going to the Format menu this time, Group. And now I have myself one complete bicycle and I can move it around. Okay, so that's selecting a couple of items, that's selecting a lot of items, and that's grouping them together so the computer treats them as one thing. If I move to the top, I've got a bunch of shapes here. So I have an arrow, I've got something behind here, I've got this square with a bite taken out of it, I have a star, and I have a heart. Yeah, I'm going to click on this thing behind it because I'm not really sure what that thing is. I can kind of see something peeking out here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take that yellow orangey kind of thing and I'm going to select it and I'm going to right click on it. And when I right click on it, I'm going to find in my menu option Order. Now if you don't really like right clicking, you prefer menu options, same thing here. Down under, not align, I take it back, group align, okay, position, nope. Well, it's in there somewhere. I like to right click, that's why I don't know where the menu item is. Right click, under Order, I can change the order. So right now it's near the back. I can bring it to the front, and if I bring it to the front, then I see that it's actually a text box. If I decide I don't really need it all the way to the front, if I say, for example, well, let's see, what are my other options there? Bring to front, send to back, that puts it all the way to the back. If I try another option under Order, bring forward. So if I bring it forward, it's now in front of the square, but still behind the arrow. So what I'm doing is I've got several different layers, and if I bring it to the front, it's going to come all the way to the front. If I send it to the back, it's going to go all the way to the back. But if I bring forward or send backward, it's just going to move one layer at a time. So I can use that to create some interesting effects or layer up several different shapes. That's the basics of what's going on with shapes. You'll notice that on that Format menu, I've got a lot of different options for fill and things, so I can change the fill of any one of those things. I can do some, I've got more fill options, I've got some gradients, so I can make it fill with different shading as well as different colors. I have some options for the lines, so I can change the line color, I can change the line weight. Weight, when we're talking about lines, is the thickness of it. I can make the lines dashed and so on. So I've got a lot of different options. I have some shadow and so on options, so I'm going to take my rectangle down here again, and if I put a shadow on that, then it gets a shadow. And up along here I can control that shadow, so I can move it around a little bit, so I can make the shadow longer, taller, whatever. I can actually, under Shadow Effects, Shadow Color, I can change the color of the shadow. So it doesn't have to be a gray shadow, it can be something else. I have some three-dimensional effects, so I can make it into a three-dimensional thing. And I can change the particular angle and how tilted it is from there. And I can also, under 3D effects, I can change the color of the 3D. So right now mine is fairly gray. So I've got a lot of different options, and I'll give you some time to experiment and try these things out. But I do have to be mindful of time. Okay, I'm going to put that one to the side. And I'm going to take the other one that I had. Now if you didn't grab it before, it's called Text Wrapping, and it's on that page of words where it says Advanced Features. And if I open that, I get this. So I get a document with a bunch of words and a shape. Now I'm going to start with clicking on the shape. And you notice on this shape, which is a big block arrow, there is the sizing handles. Those are the blue circles. There's the rotate handle, the green circle, and then there's this yellow diamond. Now we haven't said anything about the yellow diamond yet. You may or may not know, but if you were to click and move that yellow diamond around, what you're doing is you're changing the characteristics of that arrow. I'm not going to change it too much. If I put that arrow right up into the text, right up into the words, you'll notice that right now that it covers up the words, which I don't really want. But that's kind of like one of those, it's not quite the same thing as order, but it's kind of like that. I've got these layers. I've got a text layer and I've got a graphic layer. If I select my arrow, and again I can either do it from the menu, which under the format menu I'm going to be going to text or wrap text. I can also do that as a right click, and I will find format auto shape down here. And from there I will have layout options for wrapping text. So if I just move that to the side so I can see what's going on. If I select square and click OK, then the text forms around the shape in a great big square. But you notice the arrow, the way it points and the way the shaft is, that I could get the words much, much closer to it than it doesn't have to be a square. So I'm going to use the menu because I have it up. So text wrapping, if I go to tight, now it wraps tightly around the shape. If it goes through, that's about the same. If that's top and bottom, that's probably not very helpful. That is where the shape is behind the text, which kind of like it says, behind the text. In front of the text, which is where I started from, and I don't want that. I'm going to go with tight. Now if you'll notice, I can move it around, and along the one edge, along the right-hand edge of the arrow, it's tucked in nice and tight, nice and smooth line. It almost follows the arrow quite parallel. With the other side, it's a bit more of a jagged edge. If I'm here, that looks like a big gap. Part of that is the paragraph alignment. So if I select my paragraph and I go back to my original home tab, I can change the alignment. So I've got left align right now. I can do center align. Notice how it's changed the look around the arrow. I can do right align. Now the left edge looks pretty good, but the right hand side of the arrow doesn't. If I take my last option, justify, then I get where the text lines up with the arrow quite nicely on both sides. And if I move my arrow around a little bit, it's going to keep, as much as it can, it's going to keep the wrapping or the way the text lines up with the arrow pretty similar. Balanced. Balanced, I think, is the word I'm looking for. Okay. In terms of the basics of working with graphics, that's pretty much where we're at. So we want to know how to actually, I should show you one more thing. We want to know how to manipulate graphics. We want to know how to group graphics. We want to know how to put several together to make a picture, like something as awesome as that bicycle. We want to be able to work with graphics and text together. There's a few other skills, but in the interest of time, I think what we'll do is we'll leave it there, and I'll show you a couple more things later at another time, and then we'll roll it all together in an assignment. And then you'll be awesome. You'll be on your way to being computer literate. See you later.